What's going on, man? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear. How's everything going, man?
Good, good.
So you represent P. Ryan. I mean, that's I was born and my first home was in Perrine. Tell the people a little bit about Perrine and what Perrine is like in terms of the context of Miami.
It's some of the southernmost parts, like by Cutler Ridge and kind of right before you get to the Keys and Homestead. So we were down there, down south, and that piece you're showing right there is off of 168th Street by where I used to live. And
Richmond Drive.
What's that?
Richmond Drive.
Yeah, that's right. Right by where Merlin and I used to walk to school. So we used to walk by this piece every day, and we'd go there after school and before school and just check it out. Need sent me this image, and I just remember that it brought me back a lot of memories. Like what we used to aspire to, and just thinking about those colors and the letter forms and all that stuff.
And what year is this, and who are the writers we see up on this wall?
Oh man, I want to say 85, 86.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was way early. That was all out of Art Rainier and Sonar.
Nice.
Yeah, it was off the train for sure. There was a railroad line that used to go through there. But yeah, Perrine, it was south. It was, it was on the cusp. It was not your affluent neighborhood, by any stretch of the imagination.
Right, and when you before you started writing, so we see writers like you said, Rainier, Sonar. Who else was getting up in those areas at that time?
There was Miro, and AOA. There was a younger dude named Near. What was his name? Near, name 109, name 189.
Mm-hmm.
I forget all these guys, but they were a lot of people were doing a lot of stuff down south, actually. Like there was kind of a little bustling movement. Ease and Faz were from down there too, and Scott John Rage was down. A lot of people were from the Perrine, sort of South Miami area. And AT Cam for sure started down there.
And so this is now you painting in one of the pennants. What was your experience like transitioning from watching these writers, these legendary writers that you mentioned, and now you're picking up a can and putting in work?
Oh, it was amazing. We followed hip hop culture pretty closely. Where I was from, I've always lived this life of kind of a duality, like in the same sort of 8-track tape. It was, Rush and, Led Zeppelin, but right by, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and Ultramagnetic. And, we were inspired, to do what we saw. And then when Subway Art came out, we were totally we were blown away, by everybody doing these amazing pieces. Like it went from bombing and just tagging to doing some really incredible, sort of art forms and letter forms and things that we were playing with layering and colors and stuff. But I guess the gist of it is that piece that you showed before, that was me and Merlin. That was one of our first real things that we got together. And it's a funny story. My mom drove us out there in her, Honda Civic and waited out in the parking lot. We had bags with us, with a bunch of cans in them, jangling and jingling. And I was like, Mom, you can go now, But we were young. I don't know, what were we, 13? 12, 13 years old. And she was letting us go out into this field at the Pennant, this big, giant abandoned building. So I'm actually going to give my mom a little bit of props on that. For allowing us to venture out. I'm thinking I wouldn't do that for my kids right now.
Which pennant was this?
That was the Fountain Blue.
Okay.
The big one with the Jesus Saves on the outside.
Yep. And as you can see, the walls are pretty bare. It looks like this is one of the first pieces on there. Tell us about this love piece and about VIP Crew.
Yeah, they were all the. I might tap my phone to just keep it on. Yeah, they were all like concrete masonry units. They're, you know, the old cinder blocks. So we had to um, really coat the paint thick on those things. I remember being, you know, one of the first pieces we did, actually, I remember, um, it wasn't at the pennant, but it was another brick wall, but we thought like brick walls was the, where you were supposed to do graffiti, right?
Yeah, that's
So
the
I
Beat Street
remember,
story. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
right.
Subway Art Beat Street story. Yep.
Exactly. So we were like, all right, we see it, you know, we saw it on the jackets and in the pictures. And when we went to actually do it, like, we were like, damn, this paint doesn't, you know, this brick is soaking the paint in. Like next day there was basically nothing there. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of funny. It was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, the pennant was tough, man. Like there was places in there that were like black as night. You would need a flashlight to get through in order to get up to a certain spot. There was holes. That place was an abandoned building.
Yeah.
You know, they thought it was going to be a penitentiary, but I think it might have been an apartment building or something they were trying to build up there. I don't know.
No
And I
doubt.
don't know if anybody has any real facts on what that building was supposed to be, but it was humongous.
And tell us about VIP Crew. Who put you down? Who was in it? What does VIP stand for?
It was Vandals in Power. That was one of the early crews that we got together. It was Seal. You know, there was Don. There was Junior. There was Mac. There was a lot of young kids that we got together with, and you know, we felt, you know, TMS. I think, you know, early AIM stuff we used to do. I think there was DOM also simultaneously or before VIP. And correct me if I'm wrong, because my memory actually, you know, is a little bit leaves a little to be desired now. But it was Vandals in Power. That was one of the first, you know, crews that we all got together with. We became like a big family at that point. You know, so the people we ran with were, you know, in retrospect, highly motivated young individuals. You know, like thinking back, like there was a lot of plotting, a lot of things that went, you know, into doing what we did. And Seal, you know, I know people have said this a lot before, but I want to reiterate, you know, how much of a motivator and a leader, you know, he was to all of us, actually, or he still is, actually. I keep in touch with him. I know a lot of people do, but you know, I still talk to him, and man, you know, he's full of inspiration all the time.
Absolutely. For those of you that don't know, Seal is one of the legendary members of AIM Crew and definitely a big influence on Miami's entire graffiti scene. So big up Seal 6, AIM Crew in the building. Tell us about this piece. What is this piece and who rocked it?
You know, I was actually, I sent this over here. I sent it to Merlin recently, and I know we did it. But we were like, what the hell did it stand for? I think we were trying to start a crew called COP. And that was one of the pieces we did at the pennant that was, to be honest, like, I don't think we know. Merlin's on here. I don't know if he still remembers that, you know, like, did he figure it out? But that was one of our early pieces. I remember with all the big wedge shapes and the sort of cracks in the letters that we were trying to explore at the time.
Yeah, and Mech just mentioned that DOM Crew was founded by Merlin and came after VIP. So that's what this is. We're here just to kind of straighten out our history, and it's all good. This is 30 plus years of history, and that's why we put it on record.
Yeah, and I'm going to be the first to tell you that, you know, I'm not a historian, so I'll be happy to be corrected. But,
so, Too Deaf, who rocked this piece? And
yeah, that was Merlin and I. That was early, and it was all of us out there. I remember that was another. I believe that's another pennant piece. I can see a VO5 up there. But that was, again, you know, that was highly influenced, but that was a Merlin style. I can see it already with all the cracks and the, you know, the sort of bony letters looking stuff. But Merlin, do you remember that? I can see you. Max, you sent me this image. Give me some info on that.
No doubt. So this is Too Deaf. It's in one of the pennants, and as you pointed out, we see a VO5 tag. There's a tag that says 85. So maybe that was there before that piece, but sometime around 85, 86.
Yeah, that's about the time that we were doing that. You know, I would say between 85 and 87 probably. you know, running around in that building, trying not to get hurt or jumped.
In the fountain blue pennant.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now we see your style starting to develop a little bit more, right? And and obviously the place is bomb now, and there's layers and layers of pieces. So you
Yeah.
guys were definitely there to set off some of these places, and now you just keep going there. You know, were pennants an opportunity for you to practice, to get photos? Why did y'all go?
That's exactly right. You know, like it was kind of like a blank canvas. It was like a Disneyland for us, you know. We'd run around and get crazy in there and do, you know, bananas things. And it was just a big, empty, giant building. If you can imagine, probably 50,000 square feet of wall space, you know, just to kind of go nuts. And it was all bombed. And it was really, really a practice spot where we felt like we wouldn't get caught or chased or arrested, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did get chased and we got in, you know, several skirmishes, you know, things that we don't want to discuss, but things, yeah, but we, for the most part, it was like a free reign. Like it was just a place that we can go and just, it was kind of like our legal wall at the time, you know. Although,
sorry, go ahead.
No, although it was illegal, it felt like a legal wall. We didn't get messed with in there.
And two things I want to point out. One, this RA tag was very like, this was definitely all over Miami. That R, the way it looked, so unique. This real like huge bottom piece and a small top piece with that circular A. And then also like this old school B-boy. This is something straight off, looked like straight out of Subway Art, right?
Right.
And that was us because we were behind. You know, we were a little bit behind everyone else because we're learning from what New York is sharing with us.
That's exactly right, man. I was thinking to myself, you know, like we were probably, you know, second generation, you know, Miami, like from our crew. And we were probably fourth generation altogether, you know. And when I say generation, I don't mean a full lifetime. I mean, like, you know, just sequential, you know, because definitely New York was first. But when we came out in Miami was strong, man. Like it had a really good graph scene.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you mentioned Miro and Micro earlier. I mean, me growing up, I remember seeing Bic and Can Crew up everywhere down south.
Yeah, Can Crew and Icy and Scam and those guys that would bomb the metal boxes. And I wanted to mention, you know, another individual that was very influential to me, and I've actually had, you know, interactions professionally with him later on in life, was Mega. You know, some of those early, like the can control that guy had was, I think, you know, futuristic. Like when those throw-ups he used to do, the MA and the 88 boys and all that stuff was, you know, on the electric can. It was beautiful, beautiful typography. And he's actually, you know, made a career in making letters, you know, and doing graphic design. We ran into each other later, in New York when he was working for a studio up there, and we wound up doing, you know, I wound up working with him, you know, on some graphic work. So it was pretty
awesome.
Yeah,
and I remember the mega piece he did at Town and Country when they were first putting up the middle spot. I mean,
right.
Absolutely simple, perfect looking b-boys. It was the real thing.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time. That Rick.
So tell us about the history of RA Crew.
Well, you know, Merlin and I have been close friends, you know, for a long time, probably since, you know, 12 or 13 years old, when I was, you know, in 7th grade. So we'd been kind of just buddies, you know, from the giddy up, like from when we first met, you know, to this day, where his family came up here just a couple weeks ago to spend some time after Christmas with us. You know, I'm kind of belaboring the point, but we were like brothers, you know, early on. We had a really good, close friendship. And, you know, stories about picking him up, you know, like he used to take the bus and you know, for 45 minutes to get down to Southwood, you know, where he can go to art school as a young child, you know, a kid. And, you know, we would drive by him going down 168th Street and be like, oh, look at this dude, you know, he's walking, and I see him at school. One day we just decided to pick him up, you know, when I say we, I mean my mom, and we, you know, we gave him a ride, and ever since that day, you know, like we've been, you know, tight like brothers, dude, like for the whole time. So RA started when we were in high school, and I believe he might debate me on this, but I remember taking a computer class at South Miami Senior High, and I was introduced to the acronym RAM, you know, for Random Access Memory, and that was the beginning. I started writing RAM, you know, a lot, and then it just got abbreviated to RA, you know, for, you know, renowned artists, or, you know, Rebel Army, or whatever you want to call us, you know, but it's still, you know, that's what my memory is of that. You know, I think it could have some definitely, you know, derivation. But yeah.
And your name L. So what's a little bit of history of your name L? Because, you know, in Spanish it means the. So when you write L1, you're saying the one, right?
Yeah, you know, it was, you know, a little bit of, you know, I guess posturing, and frankly, it just, you know, I wish I had better concept for it, but it, you know, I like the letters to be 100% straight, and it was easy. It was abbreviated. I could do it fast and, you know, get away. Right? Like I didn't have to spend the whole time, you know, saying, you know, supercalifragilistic across the whole thing. But
right. Quick
you
two
know,
letters in and out, right?
yeah, that's right. Exactly.
And I also, like, these next few pieces or get-ups that we're looking at, like this L here, this RA, you guys, I you know, just what I've seen around South, I feel like y'all were the first ones that really started doing this in cursive style in terms of pieces. I could be totally wrong, but what I remember seeing, y'all bringing that to the table.
No, and I think, you know, it's funny because that started a lot of controversy back in the day. You know, like who was, and you know, I hate to say it, but I think that we, you know, we definitely did do, you know, start doing a lot of the script stuff early on. And, you know, other people caught on to it, but I'm not going to say, you know, we started it, because I can't be sure. You know, nobody's that original to create something out of nothing. So, you know, we might have got it from somewhere, but I think that, at the very least, you know, we started you know, really playing with this scripted kind of lettering. And these are really quick get-ups, and they're a little embarrassing to look at actually, but it's cool. It's cool to see in general.
And so I mean, you come from the school of illegal graffiti, you know, before street art is what it is. What do you think, again, let me just point out this RA tag. These were classic. They were seen all over Miami at that time, you know, those,
Right.
the way that those were written. What do you think is like the biggest difference between legal graffiti or legal street art and illegal graffiti?
I think it's day and night, to be honest. But, you know, in retrospect, I feel like, you know, as older school gentlemen, you know, we walk around and we see a lot of stuff that's going on in the world today. And you know, every once in a while, I think like everybody else, you know, we're like, damn, you know, like that looked like that. We could have never done that, you know, out in broad daylight, like people are doing right now. And not to mention doing it broad daylight, but also getting commissioned and getting paid, you know, decent amount of, you know, dollars to make these things happen. That wasn't really what we were doing, you know, like it was a different mentality then. You know, we were thinking about, like, it was like a secret society almost, like a codification of like almost like a hieroglyphics, right? Like if you learn the language, you can kind of understand it, and you had to kind of get into it and get obsessed with it to figure it out. And then not only figure it out, but then, you know, go sort of against the grain of whatever's legal, you know, in the situation. So I'm going to say that there's a certain amount of, let's say, ground that we've laid in order for the things that that are appreciated now that were considered vandalism at the time. I mean, you couldn't find anyone, you know, aside from maybe a Henry Chalfant or Martha Cooper or something, you know, like to really appreciate what we were doing, if that makes sense, you know. But now, you know, once you start seeing this stuff, and it becomes like a beautification instead of a vandalization, you know, the tides are turned and people are desiring it as opposed to, you know, not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as you know, it seems like every RA Get Up piece that we see, you and Merlin always painting together. Who was there? Anyone else in the crew?
Yeah, you know, we had there was Spray was involved, you know, for a while. We had we had friend Rick Lyon, you know, like I'm sorry, I shouldn't say names, you know, Alone and Merge. There were people that were, you know, kind of RA by affiliation, if that makes sense. But, you know, for the most part, down the line, you know, RA was just us. It was just me and my boy, you know.
And this is the Bake House. So what to you is the significance of the Bake House in Miami, and what role did it play in graffiti?
The Bake House was incredible. You know, the visuals from '95, I think, were part of its allure, right? Like, if you can drive by 95 and see it, and that means, you know, thousands of cars a day, you know, getting eyeballs on your work. We weren't the first people to piece the Bake House rooftop. As I'm sure you all know, I think there was a sneak seam on there before us. But this is it's the new style. So it was kind of a response to that, and also taking into account some, you know, sort of hip hop history and the Beastie Boys, and, you know, referencing some rap lyrics, and that's where it became, you know, more of a phrase instead of everybody's name, right? It was, you know, it's the new style. There's a lot of other ones.
It's the new style.
4 and 3 and 2 and 1.
What up? No doubt. And then this right here, now all real Miami graffiti writers know where this piece is. So much.
If you've been in that room, you know what's up.
So plotting, scheming, smoking, drawing, reasoning. What room are we in? What's going down here?
This is Seal's room, right?
Yep.
Yeah, this is Seal's bedroom. And we painted that thing, and we had no ventilation. We're probably going to suffer from that, you know, at some point in the near future. But
even, I mean, look at that computer monitor right there. I mean, we're talking
right?
old school.
That's an old CRT from like Radio Shack, dude.
Word. But yeah, man, this was the room where everyone just got it in, man, and so much masterminding of work went down in this bedroom. Again, just to clarify, this is in Seal's bedroom in South Miami, and it was painted by Merlin and L. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was. I don't know if it was just us, but I know Seal was definitely involved. Okay. But we were definitely in there, you know, running trying to play with those fades and those swirls that we were trying to master back in the day, like with these old spray paint cans. You know, it's just hilarious. You start to think about, like, now cans and tips are like they're
made
designed for almost airbrushing, but, you know, try to get a good fade and with a Home Depot, you know, like shitty can, excuse me, with a really crappy tip. You know, it was tough. Like, it's different now. Like, I think that the technology, like, you know, you make the comparison to like Frontierland at Disney World versus like Westworld, you know, where it's like, you know, you go to Disney World, that's all these animatronics. It's like old school. It feels old, like it's like a dial-up phone, you know.
Right. And even speaking of like this style, we were just talking about Seal. I feel like there was a time where Merlin, L, and Mech were kind of crew battling Seal and Dunn, and y'all were just wherever each other were, y'all were just topping each other constantly. You know what I mean? And that was my inspiration. This is I think what early 90s, right? In 89, 90 maybe, when y'all
Yeah.
really it was like Merlin and L and Mech and Seal and Dunn. Those were the two teams.
I don't know if there were teams, I wouldn't call it separate, like it's, we didn't have cell phones back in the days.
Right.
So it was like whoever used to, yeah, it was that was 90, and Mech used to run with us, doing that stuff too. I actually moved to school to go to New York, during the time, and these guys, would still continue to get up and put me up too. But I wouldn't call it a competition, more or less, and less of a like syncing up. I think we would have all done it together and done, huge productions.
Word.
For sure.
Most definitely. Yeah, when I'm in competition, I mean kind of just pushing each other to the limits to make sure that, y'all are just, everybody's getting up. Of course, the crews would always remain AIM-RA. And speaking of that, AIM crew was definitely legendary in terms of linking up with, you had AIM, FA, RA, WBB, Bomb, STV. What was it like to be part of that collaboration of these little crews making one big giant crew?
In retrospect, I don't think we had any idea what we were doing, like what the significance of it was, and people might, like if you ask anybody else, like they probably don't know what the significance of it was, but it was monumental, like those were amazing, like a bunch of motivated kids. Like imagine that, like just getting together with a common cause, like doing things that was, I don't know, it changed my life in terms of like how I even approach daily things, like just that amount of motivation and that sort of like camaraderie and like, hey, what are you doing, dude? Like, yeah, we're going to go do this thing right now. And I'm like, okay, let's go. It was like a hurry up, let's do this thing, because like life is too short. So I guess that was, it sounds cheesy, but it was kind of what it felt like let's go, whatever, man. Like I don't got anything else better to do.
I mean, y'all were young kids coming together and going all city, as Mech was pointing out, and in ways that only big corporations dream to do. And you captured, it was a language that us in the streets understood, and no one else really, they either saw it as an eyesore, they just didn't even know it existed. But to us, it was this whole underground movement of young people making names for themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And that, I think that, that was what, when graffiti started coming into Miami and I was young, as I mentioned, probably second generation, I started noticing tags and I was like, what is that? What does that mean? And I got really intrigued, and I think it just takes a certain kind of person to kind of like focus in on that. And then all of a sudden it's another language that you're learning, right? Like we're writing things that people see visually, but they really can't read it. So it was like a secret society that we had, which was exciting. It was like the ghetto version of Dungeons and Dragons, I guess, in a sense.
Word.
We kind of run around and we do things like, we have somebody named Merlin,
Right. Right. And for those of you that are just joining us right now, we are live with L1, our A crew. I hope y'all are really having a good time and enjoying this interview, learning about Miami history. I hope y'all are learning as much as I am, because we are with one of the true legendary kings, man. And with that said, keep the chats going. We love the energy and everything y'all are bringing to the table. And so off the rail, right? Now we're off the Metro Rail train, and we see this Geraldo body shop piece with the AIM-RA. What can you tell us about this wall here?
I think all of we always aspired to do things off the rail because we just thought the more visibility, the better, and if you have guaranteed traffic all the time. These rooftops were amazing. They're just fun to do. And, you know, this one, and there's a couple other images, and, you know, I think in the slideshow that I've seen that they're pivotal, you know, like they're scary too at the same time, you know, dogs barking and, you know, people going crazy, you know, like you're just getting chased off of these places, you know, like, yeah, it's like a perfectly blank canvas, but it's also, you know, we bring up this legal versus illegal idea where it's also like a challenge. It's like, I can only imagine, you know, some rock climbers and stuff like that adrenaline rush that they get is what we used to get when we used to do these things. But, you know, we were doing art on walls that were inaccessible. Mm-hmm. Right. And then you see that RA right below there, that was you know, in the writing, that's the way that almost got emblazoned, right? Like that was it. That was everywhere.
Yeah,
for a while.
And so did everyone in RA have that similar tag style, or that was one of you specifically?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to keep it consistent. I don't think we were, you know, nobody was trying to outdo each other with hand styles or anything, you know, like mm-hmm. We wanted it to be a somewhat of a trademark.
And when you look at the simplicity of this piece, for example, break this down for us. How many different colors are we really looking at? How long does something like this take? How many cans? To the best of your recollection.
Yeah, I mean, you know, how many cans? That's a good question, you know, because I feel like I've always been bad at estimating that, you know, like I either go over or under. But, you know, there was 3 or 4 colors for the fill-ins. And the outlines, I know, were always, you know, like I was never great at them. Merlin was always the master at making those things really sharp. So, you know, I was good at the fill-ins and the designs inside, but the cleanup crew, you know, was definitely on Merlin's edge. So this one, I don't think I was a part of this one, but I know of this piece. So that's, you know, a couple of individuals that we know
up top.
On top of that, yeah.
No doubt. So you did a lot of work with AIM crew, a lot of unified pieces with AIM.
Yeah, you know, that was our family. You know, that was, you know, we had different kinds of home lives. You know, like, and with the kids that we ran with it felt good. It felt good to be around with them. So, mm-hmm. and as I mentioned before, you know, Seal was a great motivator, an incredible leader.
Word up. This one now, so this piece to me is legendary because I saw it in photos before I ever saw it in live. And I remember that's always kind of like a mystical feeling because you would see the picture and it's already emblazoned in your mind as like this legendary piece. I remember being on South Beach one day and then just like seeing the piece for real and couldn't believe it was in front of me. Tell us about this collaboration. Who got down and what is it?
So this was a chaos wall. Like our friend Chaos put this whole thing together. He actually came up, he said, he's like, oh, I got a legal wall. So this was done in broad daylight. And you can see the KA on the left and the RD in the middle. So my friend Rodney, which I should mention, you know, he was Merge and he did a lot of things. He was a fantastic artist. Him and my friend Richard were like original artists from Perrine and South Miami and Cutler Ridge. They weren't necessarily in the graffiti scene, but they came in, you know, with us to kind of do it because they understood it as an art. But they were true artists, you know, like as kids, like they would do amazing things and you know, both of those guys, I should say, to this day are probably the reason why, you know, I am doing what I'm doing right now, you know. So I should give a big up to Rodney and these guys. Anyway, that chaos wall was amazing. It was really cool. I mean, it was a garage. I think they did body work at that place, so there was a lot of old school cars and stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can see. Anyway, this piece is crazy too. Actually, this was one of the scariest and nuttiest things that we did, I think.
Why is that?
Because, you know, it was like a wall off the Metro mover.
Yeah.
So it was straight up downtown. There was a Metro mover that would go around every, you know, 5 minutes, and it had a police officer on it. And it would be, you know, probably what I would say, you know, to be 30 to 40 feet away from what we were doing. And I can still, I go by that and I'm like, yeah, that's the wall, you know, till this day. I'm like, damn, that was close. So what we would do is to the right of the L here, we would go and we'd hide, you know, behind the AC unit. There was a rooftop AC unit. We'd hear the Metro mover coming, you know, that buzz, and then we'd be like, oh shit, it's here. And so we'd run behind that thing and we'd wait for the dude to go by. And then once it went by, we'd come back and we'd finish it up. It was a little harrowing, you know, like, to be honest, it was, we were literally like dodging the bullet.
Word.
At that time.
I mean, speaking of dodging bullets, again, this is right off the train. And just to point in the background, what they call the chamber pennant, you see the wall is actually kind of bare. There's no pieces there yet. And this became a very famous place for pieces. See if I can.
Yeah, that wall back there was where, you know, that McMurr, and there was the early AIM stuff back there, right?
Yeah, yeah. A lot.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that's right near the Miami River.
Yep. And again, I'm gonna just go through these as we talk. A lot of this stuff was right off the train and a lot of rooftops. What was the difference between painting for stuff off of the train versus painting walls just for, you know, that you would see as driving on the street?
I think the train, you know, like we were obsessed with this idea of eyeballs on our work, you know, like the more visibility we can get, the better. And I think, you know, it's still pretty much like that for anybody. Like this piece, well, you know, that the one you showed before was also off the train. You know, that was really close to the Metro Rail, but the Metro Rail didn't come nearly as often as the Metro Mover came. You know, that thing was literally going around every 5 minutes with a police officer on it. Yeah. But you can see the scale, like right there. You can see my man. You know, these things weren't small. They look small, but they're pretty big. So this is when I moved up to New York. But yeah, I speak a little bit more about, you know, the train versus the highway. I feel, I don't know, is there a distinction? For sure. I think that, you know, having the idea of a train going by all the time where, you know, we couldn't necessarily bomb the train because that was really hard in Miami. And we always had like an itch to do that. So I think it was as close as we can get to that feeling. You know, I didn't get to do the trains until I got up to New York.
And I noticed you said when you went up, you started painting with Edek.
Yeah, Edek and I, you know, we were friends down in Miami too. You know, we were always good friends, but I knew he moved up to New York like maybe like 6 months before I moved up there. So the minute I got up there, I was like, yo, what's up? You know, like, let's sync up. And he lived in the South Bronx near Crotona Park. So him and I would get together a lot. We'd go hit the scrap yards and we did Crotona Park racquetball walls. And that's one of those pieces that you see, I think a couple of slides back with Edek in there. And he made his way through there. He got into some pretty big crews up in New York, which were, you know, like the super duper, like higher echelon, you know, like stuff that we always wanted to be. So, certainly, in that regard, like him and those guys, and, you know, I'm thinking of like VO5 and like Dash and those, you know, everybody that moved up to New York, you know, made their way, and Rage, and everybody got into crews, you know, that we used to once watch, you know, like on TV and in magazines and stuff. And, you know, like that's a version of success, you know, in my opinion, for those guys in terms of what we were doing. So this is a piece in Brooklyn. It's on a wall. It got buffed halfway, so I had to come back and finish it. So this is also this is off the F train in Carroll Gardens. So you can see this piece from the train. So this is a recent work that was, this is a commission piece, you know, so this is, you know, it's straddling the ideology of legal versus illegal, but it was a large scale, it's like a 4,000 square feet of wall. You can see it's on a light rail here in Charlotte. And Rage actually came up and played a pretty significant role in helping me out on this piece. This is one of my favorites, actually. It combines a lot of the things that I've been doing lately, you know, between, you know, photography and working digital art into the scheme, and you know, a lot of the layering and the work that I do between, you know, like there's a lot of juxtaposition, like between analog and digital. Like I want, you know, I like to do hands-on stuff and then like layer over a lot of the you know, more technical stuff. So this is it was a huge piece. It's probably the biggest piece I've ever done, you know, in terms of, I wouldn't call this a mural. I'd definitely call it more graffiti than it is a mural, but it's painted, it's there, it exists, so it's something to talk about, I guess. So these are more of studio work. So these pieces in particular, you know, I started taking a lot of cues. I mean, graffiti has always made its way, especially in technique, into what I do. So all of these paintings are, you know, I would say directly influenced by, if not directly by graffiti, but certainly by the urban environment. So, you know, there's a lot of influence by, you know, the grid and the city structure, and, you know, the same way that a Mondrian would do a Broadway boogie woogie. You know, this is kind of what I would think of as a reconstruction of an urban kind of plan. And a lot of technique experimentation here. There's laser, there's photography. I was infatuated with this idea of the glitch, you know, early on when computers came out, like how do you break a JPEG up into 1,000 pieces, and then I wanted to make it physically, and I was like, so I made all these collages and cut them up into a bunch of pieces of wood and then reassembled them. So that's how these pieces came together.
So it's kind of like you're creating your own bitmap work in a sense, but in an analog. You're creating something that people would view digitally, but analog with real raw materials.
Yes, certainly.
So
yeah, and I did it a lot digitally, you know, initially, where it was all still computer and then printed out, and I was like, oh man, I need some hands-on stuff. So that's where I started to make these pieces, where it was all, you know, I was thinking about how do you make a glitch by hand, you know, and that was my inspiration there.
And so what's the major difference between like straight up illegal graffiti street art versus, and I'm talking about the creation process solely, like versus this kind of stuff we're looking at now?
Nothing.
Okay.
Sorry, I know that was a relatively simple answer, but you know, it's the same mechanism in your brain, I think. This is a little calmer. You can think about it more. I can spend more time thinking about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and I can talk about it a little more. But I think, in general, in my opinion, like the end result, I get the same sort of adrenaline rush from when something is, you know, quote unquote finished than I did when I did something on, you know, on the walls and in public.
And has your work showed in a lot of galleries? Or
Yeah, there's been a certain level of success, in the gallery and the institutional world. Um, I've always felt a little apprehensive about the whole process, and this is a bigger can of worms that we might not be able to tackle in a few minutes that we have left. But my choices have been directed towards providing things that are publicly accessible, not hidden behind a veil or a rope or anything that's a gallery wall, or you know even further, somebody else's idea of an infrastructure that they can control. So I'm going to leave it at that. It's a necessary evil, and I love showing at galleries, but I do think that there's a big disconnect between the gallery world and the general public, where I feel like, my mom, for instance, wouldn't walk into a white columns and, as opposed to walk by a mural on a wall. So I like the idea of the accessibility, when you're working with that kind of thing. Like, it should be everybody's. Whether or not it's appreciated is a different story, but at least it's out there.
Word. And so also, I noticed, so you got a degree of architecture from Harvard, and there are other graffiti writers that actually have degrees in architecture and are are professors in that field. Why do you think that's so? Why is architecture so attractive to graffiti artists?
I think I don't know. I mean, there's a spatial quality to it for me, and if I can think about what the relationship is I've always been touching the surface of a building, if that makes sense. And the words that, the work that you're going to see I think if you might show it in a second, is a building of that discussion. It's touching a spatial interface, a urban fabric, so to speak, and I think that it's also three-dimensional. Like all that 3D that people put into to graffiti, if you can simplify it to that point. There's a lot of, the tectonics. It's like a composition of the way that things come together and things are actually fixed together, and built in general, that I think is inherent in graffiti. Like, you are layering, you're putting a base coat, you're doing a fill, you're actually doing an outline, and then you're doing 3 dimensions to it. So I really feel like there's a lot of dialogue there. I don't know if there's a one-to-one relationship. I think if I had to make a comparison between architecture and anything else, it would be more sculptural than it is two-dimensional. However, I think having our hands on walls and these edifices, I think inherently gives you a sense of connection with the built environment.
And so, with that said, what role did you play in? What are we looking at, and what role did you create and play in this creation?
So this piece is it's 6 floors at the Nashville airport. So this was an open call for artists, and I won this commission based on my proposal. So this piece was, designed to connect the entire building at that corner. And this shows it from a further point of view, but all of these columns are large pieces of glass that are composed and layered. I think maybe the next slide might show a detail of it. I can't be sure. Yeah, there. So these are the different, every floor has a different color. There's an interactive component. There's LEDs that work. There's motion tracking, a lot of technology that went into this. But the reason I put that one in there was because of the fact that some of the literally graffiti technique and things that I learned early on made their way through in some of those graphics, that went into that glass.
And so what does a budget of something of this magnitude look like?
This one in particular?
Well, just in general, like these huge level of works where you're transforming buildings. Like, yeah, well, what does a typical budget look like to repurpose a building with art like this?
They have something that's called a percent for art, right? Like, and that is a mandate that makes you, any building that the city builds or that has any kind of attachment to the city or the municipality has to give 1% of whatever it costs to make that building into art, which I think is incredible and fantastic. And I can go on and on about that, but a $5 million building could have a $500,000 budget, right? Like, so the budgets are big or they could be small.
That's awesome.
It could be a small building. In this case, I think this one was, I can't remember.
Well, what's it like getting involved, like in the grant world, working with the government? What are some of the challenges, and what could you tell the young people, young artists that want to break in but don't know how?
I would say take your time. You can't rush in there like the Kool-Aid man, like, and break through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Like that it's not going to work. And I know that us as a graffiti artists, like we kind of want to do that. We want to rush in there and just bomb it, right? And just do it. I would say have patience. I think that overall timing is everything. You not only have to be prepared, but you have to be ready. So opportunity might knock a few times in your life, and I think that if you're, and I'm just talking from my experience, that if you're not ready the first time, it doesn't mean your career's over. I've missed a couple of opportunities, but you got to get up and you got to try again. And I think that pretty much anybody that's doing graph in general in the world today really has a motivated spirit. And I think I don't have any doubt that they can do it. I'm going to say that, what graffiti has done for me is it's made me, like not afraid of things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fear like presenting myself in front of somebody because I've done it on so many different scales. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and then here we're looking with your use of light. What was the concept, the artistic vision behind this project, and what are we looking at?
So this one was it was a temporary piece that was in an abandoned warehouse here in Charlotte. It was when I first came down for a residency at the McCall Center. It was basically like I would say a performance piece. So I explored a lot of ideas around I've always loved music, right? So there's a level of audio and music involved in a lot of the things that I do. So this piece, the light, corresponded, and it was a projection mapping piece. So it meant like I put a bunch of bars suspended and I did a projection. So they were all cut out and masked to those light bars. So each one of the bars would light up, and then musical composition would play, throughout. So it was a kind of a live performance, essentially.
Mm. And people were talking about your abstract pieces. What's some of the? I guess we'll jump back to one, for example. Like, what is your process when you approach something like this?
So this piece in particular, and a lot of these ones that have the cutouts and the gouges, are, for me, kind of like an archaeological study in the painting layers, but at the same time, I've worked with this idea of taking those marks are actually my pencil marks that were scanned in, so the darker the line, they created three-dimensional models. Does that make sense? So as I'm drawing these lines, we'd scan them in, and then we'd create a depth map from them. You know, so the darker the line, the deeper the gouge would be. So we'd take, it's literally taking my physical sketches that we scanned and then going over a kind of you know, a chance or happenstance, you know, painting situation. So there's this dialogue between chance and intention in all of these works. You know, like I really like this duality. And I think that exists kind of throughout my entire life. There's been a polar opposite of a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love even like the simplicity of the plywood, just keeping like that raw plywood in the back versus the bottom half where you just buffed it, you know, this perfect green.
Yeah. And there's a lot of like laser etching and CNC work in that piece too, that it's hard to see it at this scale, but yeah, I love that sort of, that's exactly what, you know, you hit the nail on the head with that duality, you know, this organic versus artificial, you know, that materiality that's in there. And that's always something that I'm very interested in exploring.
No doubt. And here, so you have some more light projects, right?
Yeah.
And how reminiscent are, like, to me, when I see lights, it reminds me of the highlights of the graffiti days. Is that any part of your vibe and creation?
Yeah, you know, I can't say that it's not. Like, it's always in there. I feel like graffiti is in, you know, the what I learned as I was coming up, I feel like has been an incredible thing that it's a thread throughout my work. So yeah, I mean, there's a lyrical kind of gestural component to this piece, and there's another sculptural piece I did in Aventura that is very kind of, it's almost like a wild style sculpture. But yeah, for sure, there's a absolute connection.
And again, here playing with light and color, right? What was your role in this piece? Like, was this a building that had a cutout in the ceiling and then you added that? How did this take place?
So this was an open call again for artists, and I submitted, and I wound up getting shortlisted and then eventually getting the piece. This piece is pretty unique in the fact that it started out with just being a public art piece, which was going to be that colored glass situation in the middle. But as we worked, you know, more with cats, we got to, you know, my studio and myself, like, we got to design the actual building itself, working with the architect of record, which was really, really incredible.
Wow.
So it started with the art piece, and then it worked its way into designing the building around the art piece. So it was actually really, really special in terms of what, you know, my portfolio and the things that I've done in my life. Like, it was a real milestone.
Dope. And here we see you mentioned that you play with typography. Again, this lends us right back to graffiti, but tell us a little bit about the messaging and what that meant.
Yeah, this one was interesting. It was a commission for Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. And this piece is about 25 feet by 9 feet tall. So it's pretty big. And this uses the electromechanical kind of flip dots. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the train station at Penn Station where they change the dates and it all flips around. Mm-hmm. So that exact technology was used to create these. And in this particular piece, I took a pretty deep data mine of the internet and kind of researched a bunch of phrases that referred to nautical terminology. I wanted it all to be about the ocean and water. And we had, I worked with a programmer that helped me kind of repurpose all those words and put them into like little pseudo haikus that would come up. And then I did a bunch of underwater and scuba diving photography and video. So the transitions, as you can see, all these bubbles and stuff that came up. I wish you could see it in motion, but like that was all the video and stuff that I took, you know, underwater. And I spent quite a bit of time down in Florida doing these things, which, you know, I worked it in. That was a perk of actually doing this piece, was getting to go back down to the Keys and spend some time underwater.
That is dope. That
And
is
each
very
one of those that we had to design that font, you know, to work within that grid. So that was typography that I created, you know, to work within that dot grid.
Mhm. And
In
again,
order to
just
be
we're running a little short on time, but if you can
okay.
spare about 7 more minutes, I think we can continue to talk about the rest of the work.
Cool.
What is this that we're looking at here?
This is actually Locus Projects. And I should mention that Merlin is a co-founder of Locus Projects, which is down in Miami. And if you haven't been, you got to go. It's an alternative art space that is dedicated to giving artists, you know, a free sort of canvas to make interesting things. And this piece is a part of a larger augmented reality piece that was citywide in Miami that I got a Knight Foundation grant for in 2014 or 2015. But this was the culmination of it. At the end, there was a show that had this is actually a house-shaped structure that was, you know, intended to be like cut in half and then split apart, almost like a, you know, a geode idea where the infrastructure was exposed and the human becomes a computer or machine, and the house is split, and you know there's sort of an apocalyptic moment there. So this is you know, your typical suburban house form with a pitched roof. One of them is upside down, one of them is on its side. So that's basically just a giant sculptural installation with some light units.
Can you actually go inside of this piece and interact with it?
You cannot walk in it, but you can walk around it.
Walk around, got it. Okay,
yeah.
Very cool. This here, as you were talking about, I mean, typography, lines, it looks like a can, like you just took a can and went wild with it and it became a 3D sculpture. What is this?
Yeah, this is specifically what I was talking about earlier with the, you know, when I look back, it really looks like just, you know, it looks like writing. It looks like it might actually say something. But this piece was done in Aventura, Florida. It's still there. There was a library there called it was the Northeast Regional Library that was torn down by Hurricane Wilma. What you see now is the new library that's up there. So what I did for this piece was I took the data from the hurricane from both airplane towers, which was the wind speed, the direction, and the duration. And I laid it all down on a plan and kind of, you'd be surprised how many directions wind goes in a hurricane. Like you think it's just like straight up, but it like every few seconds the wind was changing direction. And that's kind of what gave what actually gave the shape to this piece. So there's also a wind sensor on the roof that is tied to the lighting conditions. So as you know, if the wind is lighter during that day, like the colors will be cooler. And if it's wind is higher, the colors will become much warmer.
Wow, that is dope, man. Your work is definitely next level, and I see why you are the recipient of a Knight grant. That is awesome. That is really cool, man. This piece now, I have an organization called Path. It's a youth organization, hip hop organization, and we did some filming in front of these pieces. I did not know was your work. And so tell us a little bit about what this is and how it's interactive. This is in downtown Miami's train station there on the first floor.
It's Government Center.
Mm-hmm.
There are, you know, this was an open call as well that I got shortlisted and then wound up getting the commission for this piece. This was my first public art piece that I've ever done back in 2010, and it was a life changer. But what the concept behind this piece was, you know, there's light panels on the wall. They're custom built light boxes that each one of those little pixel squares that you see in there is all, you know, design composition. But what happens when somebody walks by is that there's a camera sensor which shoots out the infrared beams and it traces your silhouette. So this, I'm seeing it a little blown out here, but what happens is as you walk by, it catches your movement. So one of the major sort of components in my work in general is that I want it to always change. I don't want it to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And in this piece, this picked up what was the movement of the commuters, you know, right, going to Government Center, and then
Right.
outside, and then moving through the building, and then recording that movement and that interaction, and then playing it back. So it gave what I felt, it gave the building a little bit of a soul in terms of, and it had memories, right, like throughout the day. So at night when it closed down and these things are open, you see it from the outside, you can see all of the activity through the building, you know, in these pieces, which I thought was really, you know, it was somewhere in there, but it was not an expected, you know, outcome of this piece.
Word. And I have footage of young b-boys getting down in front of this and interacting with your work, and so it's so dope to
Speaking of
know.
young people, man, I there was a, you know, when I watched this piece, and there was a kid that had a backpack on, and he spent 30 minutes, and I was like, man, he's gonna be late for class, dude. It was like you know, 8:30. I'm like, man, he's already late, and he's like, he's spending the whole time there playing with it. And I was like, this is pretty exciting to me in general.
No doubt. We're winding down to our last two joints. If you can kind of summarize what it is we're looking at here.
So this is a public art piece that's going up here in Charlotte. It's a canopy structure that's based on this idea of kind of a crystalline shape. So we're, you know, it's essentially a giant sculpture that we're putting up that people can walk through and walk around. And as you can see, you know, there's still some of that language aesthetically of, you know, some of the early work. You can see the polygons and the lines and all that stuff, you know, working through this piece.
Most definitely. And
this one, you know, as our grand finale, I guess, is I guess the project of a lifetime. You know, I put together a team to design a bridge that goes across, a pedestrian bridge that goes across a major highway here in Charlotte. And we were selected from a larger list down to a short list and down to us. And this is at 95% construction documents right now. So wow. It's on its way to being real in a couple of years.
That is awesome. Yo, L1RA crew, it has been an absolute pleasure and blessing to have you rock with us. I mean, you went from your young VIP RA days to creating multi-million-dollar works, man, and for millions of people to enjoy and interact with. So really, man, thank you for your contribution to the Miami graffiti scene and to the art world and to the community, man. We are really grateful.
I really appreciate you having me on here, man. It's an honor. I have this connection with Miami and the graffiti world, like, in my heart, and it's a real honor to be included in what you all are doing. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you for your contribution. You have any last words you'd like to share with the people?
I don't, aside from, you know, just do it, man. You know, like, if you guys have any questions, you can always hit me up.
Word up. Yo, you heard from it first right here. Art Talk Museum of Graffiti, L1RA crew doing huge things. Ivan DePena, much love and respect, man. We hope to see y'all around. Make sure you follow him on Instagram. Nothing but love out here, y'all. Y'all be safe. Watch out for that COVID, man. It's snatching people up left and right. Do what you got to do to survive, y'all. One love. Be safe. Peace.